Welcome, ladies. I am excited to have you joining us for this CFC Women's Ministry Bible study. We've titled it In the Beginning, and we are going to be diving into Genesis chapter 1 through 12. But before we get to our lesson for today, I just wanted to give you a little bit of information, a couple of announcements. So you should have your workbook in front of you. If you could turn to page 4, that would be great. I would just encourage you to read the introduction at some time. It gives a good overview of what we're planning to do. It also lists several things that we have been praying for you. And so you might want to start out there. If you're like me, sometimes you skip introductions in books, but it's just really not nice because your author is tried to set it up for you. So give that a read. You might enjoy from it. And I wanted to kind of let you know what to expect this first week. Each week after our teaching time, you'll find within your book 5 days of homework, daily devotional material, Bible study, activities that you can, whatever word you want to use for it, that you can do through the week. And you're going to see that week 1 is going to be a little bit unique because we're establishing some things. We're going to explain some stuff about seeking God in the Word and why you would want to do that, kind of evaluate where you are. We're also going to give you an idea of what you can expect through the rest of the book. So week 1 is a little bit different. I wanted to let you know about that. And I also wanted to let you know that I'm going to tell you that you want to get a journal. So we will be writing out sections of Genesis. And so last time, if you were with us with Philippians, we had pages in the back of the book, but we don't have that this time, mainly because you might choose to write all of Genesis 1 to 12, or you might choose to write sections of it. You'll see that you're given those choices, but you're going to want to get a journal that you want to write out the book of Genesis in. So you're going to need that before you get to day I think it's day 2 that is the first time that you're suggested to write it out. And the last thing that I wanted to let you know about is that we send out a weekly email that has additional information. It'll have the teaching video if you come on Tuesday nights, or even if you're in a home gathering and you miss the gathering, you will have the opportunity to watch the video through the email. So you want to make sure that you receive that email. The first one will go out this week. We do use MailChimp, and sometimes it can throw our email into your junk pile or your trash. So if you don't see the email, check those 2 places first. And if you still don't see it, please email us at women@cfcommunityfellowship.com and let us know you're not receiving it. We'll look into it and see what we can do, but you should see the first email this week. Very lastly, we do have an Instagram account, and you're going to want to follow us, CFC Women, on Instagram, because we're going to be putting some additional encouragement throughout the week that you can interact with what we're learning here. So we are going to dive into Genesis chapter 1 in just a minute, but before we do that, we want to take a moment and just set our hearts before God. There are so many things in our lives. You've had a ton of things going on. If you're watching this in the morning, no matter what time you're watching it out, a bunch of stuff has happened already. If you're watching it at the end of the day, you've had a whole day worth of stuff, and you know that your mind is already starting to think about tomorrow. And we just want to take a moment, hear from God, and settle our hearts so that we can worship Him through the Word together. So please enjoy this worship video and begin to get ready to hear from God today.
Let your word be louder than my fears. Speak to the voice
we truly do want to set our hearts on God. I chose that song on purpose because I hope that's what your desire is in joining this study, that through the Word of God and learning about Him deeper in His Word and in community with other women, that you are setting your heart on God. And so that is our prayer for our time together. And I'm excited to jump in today in Genesis chapter 1. You know, when we approach the book of Genesis, we can actually we might be tempted to come with a feeling of this is so familiar, especially if we've grown up in the church, right? And we've gone to church all of our lives, we can feel like it's very familiar. Even if we haven't, we can have an idea that we've heard a lot of the stories from Genesis, and it's just these stories. It's just something for Sunday school classes. But if we approach it with that view and that opinion, we are at risk of tragically missing very crucial foundational information that God wants to communicate to us. And so we come to Genesis with excitement because it is found at the very beginning of our Bible. And if you've taken studies with me before, you know that the first thing that we always talk about is we talk about the fact that the Bible is one story. Yes, it contains 66 different books, and they're not necessarily in chronological order, and we can get confused. But we come to the Bible often in a way that we never come to regular books. We come to the Bible sometimes and we just kind of flip around and we do this kind of thing. God, will you speak to me? And we point down with our finger and we read a verse. And sometimes God can work that way. But sometimes we find ourselves really confused and we jump into a story right here and we're like, I don't know what's going on, because we approach it like we would never approach a novel. And here I've got my good old Jane Austen, and shout out to Kelly who gave me this enormous copy of all of Jane Austen's books. But when we come to a novel, we will start at the beginning and we will read all the way through. We don't just jump into the middle and then wonder what in the world's going on, because if we do that, we know that we're confused because we haven't started at the beginning. And so we have to do that with the Bible as well. Not saying that you always have to start at the beginning, read the whole thing. But if you have no concept of the meta-narrative, the storyline of God that happens in the Bible, you can be confused. And so that's one of our main goals that we have in women's ministry here at CFC, is helping us to have the tools equipped to understand what we are reading and what it means. So I welcome you to the beginning of the Bible. If you'll open your Bible to Genesis chapter 1, we will be in that chapter today, and you will see at the very beginning that it says, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And I love that beginning. I love it. I love the fact that it says in the beginning. I love the fact that it talks about God first off and what He's going to do. You know, when we understand our beginnings, we understand who we are and where we're headed. My kids love to listen to me tell the story about the day that they were born. We have scrapbooks about it. They love to hear the story about how Brian stole my jacket when we were in high school so that he could meet me, so sly that he was. And yes, I totally married my high school sweetheart. So we have some pretty goofy stories from the beginning because we were beyond not mature. My kids love hearing those types of stories. I love hearing stories of people that have dreams and how they started off on it, or entrepreneurs and how they first got their idea and how a goal was achieved. The beginnings set the tone. And God is going to set the tone for us in Genesis so that we can see what is our foundation of this Christian faith. So when we come to the Bible, we want to talk about some tools for Bible study. So the first one is, when you start a book, you need to understand what type of story you're in, what type of literature you're reading. You need to understand who's written it and who it's written to. Now, with the Bible, we don't always know 100% sure for those things, and you're going to find that Genesis has a lot of controversy included in it, and we don't need to shy away from that. We need to push into it. We need, those of you that love to research, I say research more and read. Those of you that are unsure, I say research a little and be at peace and make some decisions. So the first thing that we're talking about is what type of genre is the book of Genesis, because that sets our tone. If we think it's a myth, or we think it's a fable, or we think it's poetry, we're going to approach it one way. But if we think of it as historical, we're going to approach it a different way. So we're going to say, I loved this term that I got from one of the commentaries and research stuff that I was doing, label it as theological history. And I think that's a great explanation for what Genesis is. Genesis is unapologetically monotheistic, saying this is God. It is relaying the beginnings of the world from a theological viewpoint. It's here's how the world was created and how God was involved in it. So it's not apologizing about it. It's not hiding it. It's saying, yes, let's take a look at this and let's see what God was doing. So that's our first thing that we want to know. What type of book is it? It's a theological history. Who was it written by? Most scholars believe that Moses wrote the book of Genesis. And if you're going to think ahead, you're going to be like, wait a second, how did Moses write the book of Genesis? He's not even involved until we get to later, hundreds of years, however long, years later. We believe that when Moses went up to the mountain to meet with God, that God gave him these visions and information and helped him to be able to create this, to write down the beginnings of the world. Because it was very foundational for who it was written to. It was written to the Hebrew people who had just escaped from Egypt and slavery and were headed off, where God was like, I'm going to build you into a nation. I'm going to build you into a people. But before I can do that, you have to know your history. You have to know the beginning. So written by Moses, written to the Hebrew people. And it's important, we're going to see this in a few minutes, that these people are about to enter into the promised land where they're going to be tempted to follow the false gods of the people around them. And Genesis is written saying, hey, look, no, it's not these false gods. It's not these ancient stories from Mesopotamia about how the world was created. It is the way that God created it. So another tool that we want to use in Bible study is to come to the text with questions of who, what, where, when, why, and how. We often use those for discerning what we're reading, and we're laying a foundation. We're about to jump into the passage, but these are important foundations. So within the book of Genesis, God loudly answers who, what, and why. He answers who, like we said before, unapologetically monotheistic. It is God. And you will see that throughout the whole thing. It is Him who is doing this, and we're going to learn so much about Him. And what did He do? He created. He did not sit back and just something haphazardly happened, but He was intimately involved and He created. And why? We're going to learn that through the pages of Genesis. Why was it created? Why is it important for us to know it? We're going to learn what of you and I. We're going to learn the what of humanity, and the why is the world the way that it is, and the what are we going to do about it? And those things are answered. But what's not clearly answered are two questions that we often spend a lot of time debating. And I want you to hear me carefully. These questions are important, but the text does not clearly answer them. So there's debate around them. And those two questions are when and how. When did God create the earth? Did He create it recently? That's a young age theory. Did He create it a long time ago? An old age theory. How did He create it? Did He create it in 7 literal 24-hour days? Or did those days match up with time periods and He used evolution and He started it and He worked with evolution? There is great debate over the when and the how. And those are important questions to ask. But if we get so consumed with those, and if we break fellowship with believers who have a different opinion than we do, we miss out on the beauty of the what, why, and the who. I couldn't remember the last one. So let me just give you, if you're not familiar with the different theories that there are for creation, let me give you a few definitions for them. They're going to come up on your screen. So we have creationism, which is the belief that God created the world in 7 literal 24 hours. Then we have evolutionary creation, the belief that God created through evolution, and most likely there was a huge amount of time, and that the word day in the Hebrew Bible of Genesis, it's the Hebrew word yom, doesn't actually mean 24 hours. There's huge debate over that. Does it mean literal 24? What does it matter if it comes with a number in front of it and then said? And you could dive into it, and if you think those things are fascinating, then I would encourage you to do that. So we have creationism, We have evolutionary creation. We have theistic evolution, which is more like there was a deity or is a deity, and he kind of started things, and then he's removed, and evolution goes forward. There's the day-age theory that we just talked about, where it's not 24 hours, instead it's huge time periods. And the last one is the gap theory, where yes, it was a literal 24 hours, but the next one didn't happen until a huge gap of time came. So people have been wrestling with faith and with science and trying to figure all of these things out. But I will tell you very loudly, the book of Genesis says it was God who created. It was God. And whether he did it in a small amount of time or a large amount of time, the fact that it is God who created is the number one important thing. So we're going to jump in further and look at what God is doing in these creation days. And there's a ton. I would encourage you to read all the way through Genesis chapter 1. In fact, you're going to be encouraged to write it out later this week. But we're going to kind of hop, skip, and jump around to see what we can see, maybe something that you've never noticed about the creation story before. So you'll notice that there's a chart on your worksheet. You should be on page 8 of your workbook and hopefully following along, adding some notes. So on your day 1, what does God create in day 1? Verse 3, and God said, let there be light. And there was light, and God saw that the light was good. And God separated the light from the darkness, and God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. So on the first day, God creates day and night. On the second day, God then creates the heavens or the sky. It says in the Bible that he takes the waters and he separates them, and so we have this sky that's created. Day 3, we move to God taking the waters and moving it and bringing land up, and we have the creation of land and sea, and God names them, and we have the creation of vegetation. So here's what we want to notice. We want to see that we have day and night, we have sky, we have land, earth, and we have plants. All of those things are habitats. They are forming. They are places that he is creating. So if you want, on the side of your chart, you could put out next to it habitats, or you could put forming. And then the next 3 days, he's going to go back and he's going to fill those habitats that he created. So on day 4, he's going to fill the day and the night with the sun and the stars and the sky. And it says that they are to rule over and to create seasons. On day 5, he's going to create the fish and the birds that are going to live in the sky that he created on day 2. On day 6, he's going to create animals. He's going to create man and woman that live on the land and the sea and with the plants that he created on day 3. So from the very beginning, we see that God is very purposeful in what he's doing. And as I was thinking about it, I was like, ladies, you know what he's doing? He is nesting. So those of you that have had children, you may be familiar with this concept. You know that when you're pregnant and those 9 months are going on and you get to that last month, you start to do this thing called nesting. And they say that that often is very close to when you're going to go into labor. And I thought that was really funny, but it was absolutely beyond true. And I think it's just because you know that that baby's coming. So you start cleaning the house extra. I have a friend who the day before her baby was born, her husband, she made him, but she had her husband pull the refrigerator out and clean the floor and the wall behind the refrigerator. I don't think that baby cared what was behind the refrigerator, but she was nesting and getting ready. And so when I look at creation, I see God nesting and nurturing as a mother, but also being empowered and powerful as a father as he creates. It is creative genius, all the things that he puts together. And we begin to see beautiful things about the Lord as we look at Genesis chapter 1. We see in Psalm 19, it's written out on your worksheet for you, the heavens declare the glory of God, and the sky above proclaims his handiwork. Through this, we can learn about who God is and who we are. The heavens and the earth, they declare his glory. So we want to come to, what does Genesis 1 shape? Because it shapes 3 very important things for us. The first thing that it shapes the way that we view God. We see him as a nurturing mom, an empowering, creative father. We realize that he is the one who is powerful and in control. And there's 3 repeats there's several repeats within Genesis chapter 1, but there's 3 that I want to bring to your attention because it teaches us about God. The first one is the fact, over and over he says, and it was so. God said this, and it was so. God said this, and it was so. I think it says it 6 different times. We see God's sovereign power, that he, through his word, will speak something into existence, and it is so. I love that. And it is so. The second repeat that we want to take a look at is the fact that he continually named the things, and he names it day and night, and he names it land and sea. God was showing his authorship. He was showing his dominion by the fact that he could name these things he could create. Not only could he create these things, but he had power to name them. And the last one is the repeat of it saying, and it was good, and it was good, and it was very good, exceedingly good. God not only has the power to create and the dominion and the authority to name, but he also has the discernment to be able to say, this is good. And so we just see this view of God is repeated over and over, that when we come to Genesis chapter 1, we realize our view of God has got to be shaped and formed by this God that we see in Genesis chapter 1. And let me read a great quote that I really found encouraging. The author's name is Michael W. Paul, and he wrote a book about Genesis and Revelation. So we'll actually talk about his book. It's listed in the back of your workbook if you're wanting to take a look at it. But let me explain what he paints the picture of what we can learn about God. God alone provides purpose to our existence, and all of humanity's deepest desires are only fulfilled in God. God is the only one outside of our most dire situations, the only one powerful enough to meet our most difficult challenges, and thus the only one who can deliver us from our most desperate predicaments. No humanly crafted ideology or entity or resource can fill these roles. Neither capitalism nor communism, neither democracy nor dictatorship, neither nation state nor natural strength, neither wealth nor wisdom, only God creator. And I love that. When we allow this Genesis passage to shape the way that we view God, we are on the right path. So what's the second thing that it shapes? It shapes the way that we view creation. We need to see creation as an elaborate work of a creative genius. Beyond anything that we can think or fathom. It reveals his great intellect. It reveals his connectivity of how he connects symbiotic relationships between plants and animals and other animals, that they serve each other. And it also creates the reality of some of it is humorous. I mean, if you've looked at some of those animals and some of the things that you're like, I can't believe there's such a thing as a dung beetle, and all these different things, we can learn so much about the Lord by looking at creation. It is a gift to us. I have personally found it very encouraging during difficult days and trials to take a walk at a park, to even put a sanctuary of sorts in my backyard, to join with my husband in his complete obsession over monarch butterflies. I'm telling you, we had probably 50 cocoons in our house as he was taking care of them about a year ago, and loving watching the development of the monarchs and releasing them. There is great joy and comfort in creation, and it all points to him. It declares his glory. A couple of days ago, in preparing for this lesson, I posted on Facebook, I just simply said, I need a little help with getting ready for the lesson. If you love the mountains or you love the ocean, can you give me a couple of reasons why you love them? I got over 30 comments from friends, and they were saying these types of things. The oceans remind me of how big and powerful God truly is. I can't help but stand in awe and worship. How big the mountains are, and the reminder of how big God is. It's the grains of sand on the beach and the power of the crushing waves that washes over. And I say, who am I in comparison? I loved my brother-in-law, who is a tree expert. His answer was all focused on trees. He said, at the beach, the windswept live oak trees and the diversity of other trees are playing a functional part in the making of the beach. In the mountains, again, it's the diversity of mix between evergreens and deciduous trees, tall and short, and all combining. Just loved his answer. Another person saying, the valley, I live in the valley, and I realize how much protection the mountains provide for us from the different things, the weather. Another person says, he could have kept things simple, but no. He added color, texture, sounds, vast numbers of creatures, and plant life. And an interesting thing happened when I asked about that on Facebook. I didn't ask, how does this remind you of God? I asked, what do you love about the beach and what do you love about the mountains? Now, true, the majority of people who follow me or are my friends on Facebook are Christians and believers, but I found it very interesting that they jumped straight from what I love about the beach and what I love about the mountains to what it tells me about God. The heavens and the earth declare the glory of God. So when we come to Genesis chapter 1, it shifts and it changes the way that we view God. It shifts and changes the way that we view creation. And the last one is that it shifts the way that we view humanity. I absolutely love this. Look at verse 26. Then God said, "Let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the heavens, and over the livestock, and over all the earth, and every creeping thing that creeps on the earth." Verse 27. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him, male and female. He created them. We are image bearers of God. He created this habitat, a place where he can dwell with us. We'll see that more throughout the Bible. A place, a temple where he can dwell and be in communion and be in relationship with us. And he created us. And we stand apart from all other creation because we reflect his image. We are his image bearers in the world. And so how we view humanity is drastically affected by how we read Genesis chapter 1. We stand alone in creation and being in his image. And to quote Michael Paul again, let me read for you how he summarizes it. Each and every human being, male or female, young or old, black or white or any other shade, Christian or Muslim or Jewish or Hindu or Buddhist, disabled or able-bodied, mentally challenged or averaged or gifted, gay or straight, born or unborn, each and every human being is a person to be loved and respected for their own sake, not as an object to be used and manipulated for the gain of others. There is extreme value in each human being. And it's not based on what they can produce or what they can do or not do or what their views or opinions are. It's based on the fact that they are created in God's image. So is Genesis 1 important? Yes, Genesis 1 is important. It shapes the way we view God. It shapes the way we view creation. And it shapes the way that we view humanity. Now, I told you back at the beginning that the people that he's writing to are the Hebrew people, and they're about to be tempted to follow after false gods. So I want to bring you to another passage. If you would turn to Isaiah 40, I want you to hear Isaiah challenge some people in that same genre, of that same purpose of saying, don't follow after false gods. Isaiah comes at a time much later in the history of the Hebrew people. They're now Israelites. They're tempted to follow after false gods, to have idols. What does he use to convict them and to exhort them? I don't really think it's encouragement. I think it's a little bit harsh with pointedness. So turn to Isaiah chapter 40. Look at verse 18. To whom then will you liken God, or what likeness compare with him? An idol? A craftsman casts it, and a goldsmith overlays it with gold and casts it for silver chains. He who is too impoverished for an offering chooses wood that will not rot, and he who seeks out a skillful craftsman to set up an idol that will not move. He's mocking them. Really? You're going to seek an idol made of wood that somebody makes? Verse 21. Do you not know? Do you not hear? Has it not been told you from the beginning? Have you not understood from the foundation of the earth? It is he who sits above the circle of the earth, and its inhabitants are like grasshoppers, who stretches out the heavens like a curtain and spreads them like a tent to dwell in, who brings princes to nothing and makes the rulers of the earth as emptiness. Skip down to verse 28. Have you not known? Have you not heard? The Lord is the everlasting God, the creator of the ends of the earth. He does not faint or grow weary. His understanding is unsearchable. Do not fall to false idols. And the idols of our day are not wooden, but they still are around. The things that we give our hearts over to that are not at all God. And God says, no, Worship me, the one who has created the heavens and the earth. Turn over to Psalm. We'll see another command, another encouragement based on the fact that he is creator. Psalm 121, verse 1 says, I lift up my eyes to the hills. From where does my help come from? My help comes from the Lord who made heaven and earth. The reality that he is creator, that is the one who I seek help from. It's repeated in Psalm 124, verse 8. And it says, our help is in the name of the Lord who made heaven and earth. That's where we seek our help. We don't seek idols and other things. We realize the awesomeness of who God is, and that is a sure foundation for our life. So we come to the last statement on our note sheet. And what it says is, I worship a God who is all-powerful, all-knowing, and all-present. We saw that through Genesis. We saw his power. We saw it repeated over and over, and it was so, and it was so, and he named it, and he claimed it as good. We saw his power. We saw that he was all-knowing and wisely creating a habitat before creating the things to fill it. We saw that he was all-present, that he was involved in it, and he was intimately involved in it. Genius creativity. I love thinking about the fact that now anything that's created or invented simply uses the tools that God put in place. I love that. Lastly, the totality of who he is the surest foundation for my life. It shapes how I view God, creation, and humanity. The totality of who God is, the reality of his sovereignness, his creativity, his faithfulness, his love, his mercy, all of these things that we're going to see through the book of Genesis, that is the surest foundation for my life. Did you come today with a burden, with a way that you need help? Did you come today with a scary situation, something that seems fearful? God is saying to you, come to me, the maker of heaven and earth, and find rest and find encouragement and find your hope. It's all wrapped up in me. And Genesis 1 answers for you that I am God and I created, and that you are created in my image. And that is a beautiful, beautiful thing. If you haven't taken a walk out in nature recently, I encourage you, get out into creation this week. Take a walk. Can you go for a hike? Can you sit next to a pond or a river? Can you look at some beautiful flowers, or even find out some random information about an animal and just reflect in the glory of God that we can see in creation? We're going to go to a discussion time. There's going to be several discussion questions that come up on the screen. You don't have to answer them all. There's too many to answer. You pick the ones that fit well with your group. And ladies, be encouraged to answer, but know that you're not required to answer. So you guys enjoy time discussing these things and the ways that we put it into work, because we are seeking to make God a priority. We are setting our hearts on him, and we are asking the Lord to use Genesis and our time together and our discussion time together to help us to do that. Thank you for joining me today.